سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل ألا تتخذوا من دوني وكيلا ذرية من حملنا مع نوح وعليكم السلام إنه كان عبدا شكورا وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين ولا تعلن علوا كبيرا وعليكم السلام فإذا جاء وعد أولاهما بعثنا عليكم عبادا لنا أولي بأس شديد فجاسوا خلال الديار. What's up, Carter? وكان وعدا مفعولا. Talk to me, bro. ثم رددنا لكم الكرة عليهم وأمددناكم بأموال. Oh, that's the Qur'an. That's a good question, actually. So that's the Qur'an in Arabic. So one of the things, that's encouraged to do, you don't have to do it, but one of the things that's encouraged to do is when you recite it, to recite it like with a melodic tone, with like a melody. And there's rules of like how you do it. So that's what it is. Wa alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, no problem. ثم رددنا لكم الكرة عليهم وأمددناكم بأموال وبنين وجعلناكم أكثر نفيرا إن أحسنتم لأنفسكم وإن أسأتم فلها فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة ليسوءوا وجوهكم وليدخلوا المسجد كما دخلوه أول مرة وَلِيُتَبِّرُوا مَا عَلَوْا تَتْبِيرًا. My favorite reciter would probably be, I always forget the brother's name. Noor, can you type, I think you know his name. Can you type his name? Is it Muhammad Nooreen Siddiqui? Siddiqui, is that how you say it? Is that his name? Nooreen Siddiqui? Anyway, that's my favorite. I always forget. I always mix his name up, but that's my favorite. That's his name, right? Yeah, that's my Qur'an recitation. It's not recitation the whole time. It's just at the beginning. No, he's not Egyptian. I want to say he's from Sudan. He passed away too. He passed away in a car accident. Beautiful though. He reminds me of I don't know. It's just really beautiful recitation. He reminds me of jazz kind of. When I oh I get it because people think I'm singing. I didn't think about that. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I was a little slow on that one. I missed that one. Yeah, I think that brother, man, subhanAllah. Lion King, that's what he reminds you of? I can see that. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Well, inshallah, we'll sing a couple other verses. من لم يتغنى, it's funny, من لم يتغنى بالقرآن فليس منا. عسى ربكم أن يرحمكم وإن عدتم عدنا. Alhamdulillah, uhibbuka fillahi aydan, I'm assuming it's male. أو أحبك, but I think it's male. Nah, it's good, Carter. They just joking, man. Ain't nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with asking, man. If you don't know, ask. That's the best thing. Nothing wrong with that at all. وإن عدتم عدنا وجعلنا جهنم للكافرين حصيرا. No, you're good. You're good. I'm glad you asked. Thank you for asking. Because someone else might have thought that too. إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم. Thank you. ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما. Same to you. ويدع الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا وجعلنا الليل والنهار آيتين فمحونا آية الليل وجعلنا آية النهار مبصرة لتبتغوا فضلا من ربكم ولتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب وكل شيء فصلناه تفصيلا وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها. Same to you. ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا. Hannah, salam. I'm so happy to see you. What's going on? What's going on? وإذا أردنا أن نهلك قرية أمرنا متر فيها ففسقوا فيها فحق عليها القول فدمرناها تدميرا. Alhamdulillah, I'm good, Hannah. Good to see you. I'm better now that you're here. وكم أهلكنا من القرون من بعد نوح. وعليكم السلام. Alhamdulillah. وكفى بربك بذنوب عباده خبيرا بصيرا من كان يريد العاجلة عجلنا له فيها ما نشاء. وعليكم السلام. وعليكم السلام تسمية. Young Mustafa. And I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Yeah, you're gonna have to tell me that one. Walaikum salam. I can't. Narges, maybe? I'm not sure. عجلنا له فيها ما نشاء لمن نريد ثم جعلنا له جهنم يصلاها مذموما مدحورا. وعليكم السلام. ومن أراد الآخرة وسعى لها سعيها وهو مؤمن فأولئك كان سعيهم مشكورا كلا نمد هؤلاء وهؤلاء من عطاء ربك وما كان عطاء ربك محذورا. All right, now we can start. I just wanted to finish that part. It was just getting too good, bro. I didn't want to stop. sometimes, sometimes when I first start reciting, I don't know if this happens to you guys, but if you recite sometimes, when I first start reciting, I mean, I always, I want to, but sometimes it's not, the energy isn't there in the same way. But you get started, you get to rolling, and then you get to kind of like catching a little flow, and then it's like, oh man, now I don't want to stop. Now it feels good. SubhanAllah, man, the ayat, man, of the Quran. I'm just realizing more and more. The more that I study the Quran, yeah, for sure. The more that I study the Quran, SubhanAllah, man, the more that I'm realizing the truth of like when Allah called it a shifa, a cure. Anytime like I'm listening to a conversation, like I was just listening to Brother Warner's live this morning, and one of the guests started, he was talking, but he was giving verses from the Quran, and he was like giving them in Arabic and then translating them. And just, it wasn't even really about like, did I agree? Like he was making some good points, but it wasn't about if I agree with the points or not. It was just like hearing the ayat was nice. That was peaceful. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times, man, subhanAllah, just hearing the ayat, man, brings peace, or just reading the ayat. So today, inshallah, I know we've been talking about the last couple times. We have been talking about Surah al-Waqi'ah, Surah 56. Yeah, Warner's live was pretty good. Yeah, subhanAllah. Wa alaikum salam. I enjoyed it the time that I was there. I think he did a really good job. And actually, the class that I want to do this afternoon is actually kind of building from Warner's live. It's not exactly from it, but it's related to what he was talking about. I love you too. So I thought it would be a good follow up to some of the things that he was saying. Like something else kind of sparked into my mind to talk about this, but as I was thinking about it in relationship to what I heard from his live too, I was like, oh yeah, I think that's a good topic. So with Surah al-Waqi'ah, we've been doing that last couple of days, and then we had skipped a couple of days and did it a few days before that. But with that surah, I'm finding so much in it. I just discovered a couple other things today. Well, not kind of discovered, but just seeing like a different perspective. So we're going to keep, inshallah, we're going to keep going back to that. So don't think it's going to be like linear and we're going to be like, oh, we're going to just cover all of this section in Surah al-Waqi'ah and then move on. We're going to, we'll keep coming back to Surah al-Waqi'ah, I promise, because it's an ongoing study, inshallah. But sometimes in between, I want to share some other things. So what I was thinking about, subhanAllah, is a couple of different things. So I'll introduce it like this, that a realization I had today, and it's not really the first time I ever thought about this, but I think it just hit me a little bit harder today. For some reason, Walaikum salam, Warren, I was just talking about you. I was saying that our class today, I think, is a good compliment to what you were just talking about on your live today, inshallah. So I want to I was going to say piggyback, but somebody might say that's haram for me to piggyback. Brother, Muslims don't piggyback. Muslims don't piggyback off of each other, bro. That's haram, bro. So I think this would be a good follow up, to add to the discussion that you were having today. But so so I'll go and call the haram, please. So I'll go through a couple of the beginning thoughts of like why this class came about in my mind, like what I was thinking about. So I thought about something that I haven't thought about in a while, just concerning myself and my thought process and my approach to the Quran. And I thought about this a long time ago, but I forgot that I thought about it. And today it just kind of hit me, right? And I remembered it, and I was like, oh yeah, subhanAllah. I remember that, I used to think this concept, right? And I think it's a really beautiful concept, and it's a really beautiful way to think about the Quran. And even though I forgot that I thought of this way to put it, it pretty much summarizes my approach, how I approach the Quran, how I present it, how I study it, how I think about it, all these type of things. So what I realized is that for me, the Quran is closer to art, okay? Because when people approach the Quran as just a rule book, like a book of technicalities, right? then it's just like, okay, this rule says this and this rule says that, and you got to do this and you can't do that. So it becomes like this, basically just a dictionary of law, in a very technical sense, right? So I realized that for me, how I look at the Quran is I see the Quran more like art, right? So if you think about art, right, art is extremely powerful. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Art is extremely powerful in conveying truth, right? Because sometimes someone could paint a picture and that picture can convey more than almost any words that you can use, right? It can hit you in a certain type of way. Or somebody can make a movie, right? And it can hit people in a different way that it won't hit in a book. What's going on, Lena? Uh, that won't it won't hit them reading it in a book, right? Because some people don't want to read, so they see it as a movie or as a video or as a documentary or something like that, and it hits them more. So the creation of art, look at some of the things that we still have now that we're able to find from like ancient peoples, like statues, drawings and on walls, inscriptions in stone. So people creating art, right, has been something. You think about poetry, all this is art, right? You think about music, it's all art. So art doesn't necessarily mean that it's fiction in the sense that it doesn't relate to truth. Even fictional books, even when you read fictional books, right? When you read fictional books, in order to make a really good fictional book, the author has to put a lot of truth in it, I believe. So you can still learn things about personalities, about people, about a bunch of different stuff, right? So art is a very powerful way of conveying truth, of conveying perspective, conveying a certain perspective. That's how I look at art. I look at art as when an artist, either writes a poem or paints a picture or whatever it might be, they're conveying a certain perspective, right? And different people could approach that and see different things in it. That's also the point of art. That it also, yeah, it's a form of expression. Art also depends on the viewer, right? The interaction between the art and the viewer, right? They together, the artist and the viewer creates meaning. Okay. So for me, I realized a while ago, I just forgot that I thought about this way of putting it. That to me, uh, this is the way that I love to study the Quran, or I love to approach the Quran as art, not as a rule book, right? Not saying that it doesn't have like some rules and principles and stuff like that, but that's why so often in our classes we might say things like, "Look how beautiful!" Like we look at the connections between something, and sometimes we don't even know what the answer to the connection is, why it's connected, but just the connection itself is aesthetically pleasing. It has beauty to it, right? So today, now I had thought about that before, like the beauty of approaching the Quran as art, as opposed to just strict technical, like this is what it is, right? That it's meant to, if you think about it, like it uses imagery, it jumps topics sometimes, seemingly jumps topics because there's always an inherent unity in it, right? We're going to talk about that. But it uses all these different like rhetorical devices, rhetoric, all these different things that it uses to make the message aesthetically pleasing and attention getting. Okay, so when we study the Quran, it's not, and I've said this before, but I want to say it in this context so you can hear it a different way. That when we study the Quran, the structure is the message. Also, I believe personally, right, that the structure is the message, right? So the wording itself is not just found. I mean, I'm sorry. The meaning is not just found in the wording itself. That's part of where the meaning is found, but it's also the structure of it, how it relates to itself, how it all fits together, sentence structure, all these different things, the sounds, the letters, the look of it. The meaning is in the structure. It's all a piece of art that contains so many things to inspire us, to evoke emotions, to stimulate our intellect, right? All those things. So what I realized today when I was thinking about this is that most times, we take, alaikum salam, for sure. We take a very a very rational approach to the Quran. And let me explain exactly what I mean by that. Because there's nothing wrong with being rational. But what I mean is there's a difference between, so when people think about rational, right, and this is leading into the verses that we're going to talk about, and it's going to all connect, inshallah. But when people talk about something being rational, right, meaning like, logical, understandable, it makes sense, you can analyze it, you have evidence for it, you can back it up, you can support it, it's grounded, right? A lot of times that's contrasted with irrational. So when they say someone's behaving like irrationally, for example, right? Are you a Muslim? You have green books. Do Muslims not have green books? That's a new one. But, they say someone's behaving irrationally. It's the opposite of rational. But there's another level to that. So there's not just rational, you too. There's not just rational and irrational. There's also something that some people call non-rational. And this is more like akin to like mysticism and stuff like that, where you can discover truth through non-rational means, meaning like more intuitively. Like you don't always like have to follow this like strict chain of like logic and reasoning to get to a conclusion. Sometimes you can, through different experiences, through reflection, through your own personal experience, in non-rational ways, you can arrive at certain truths, right? The thing is, we always have to be disciplined to test those conclusions that we come to through non-rational ways, right? So that doesn't mean like any conclusion you come to, it's like, oh, that's what it is. No, you still have to test it, see if it fits with the Quran, if we're talking about the Quran specifically, fits with the verses, all that stuff, right? But it is a very, in my opinion, wa alaikum salam, Huda, a very valid way to arrive at truth, a very valid way to gain insight into how to solve certain interpretation problems. And do you know, like even mathematicians do this? When a mathematician solves a problem or develops like a theorem or something in mathematics, they don't always just follow a logical chain of reasoning. Sometimes it's through a non-rational means. They have an insight and they firmly believe, like, I know the answer. This is how you solve this. And then they have to go and like work it out. And then I don't know if I'm not saying it's every time. I'm sure sometimes they're wrong, but they tend to be right, right? So when you practice a discipline enough, your mind internalizes it, right? And it becomes like something that you have a grasp of on a subconscious level. And then your brain, that stuff is still in your brain. So your brain works on that beneath the surface, right? So sometimes you be thinking about something in the Quran and then you go do something else. And then all of a sudden, you think it's all of a sudden, but the answer pops in your head, right? You're like, oh, subhanAllah, that's what it is. I can see it now. And it just kind of clicks. But it's not because the information wasn't there. Yeah, it's you have the information there and you're letting your mind like work on it, right? Sometimes something might come to you in a dream, possibly, right? There are non-rational means of discovering truth. The thing is to always remain grounded and make sure we test those things. Like once we feel like we have a certain conclusion, we go and test it. We don't just start saying like, oh, this is what it is, right? Okay, so I said all that to say, a lot of times people devalue that way of arriving at truth, right? But what I realized today is, subhanAllah, yeah, for sure, Salman, you can email me. My email is in my bio. Wa alaikum salam. So what I realized today was when the Quran describes itself, it doesn't describe itself as the most rational hadith, the most rational speech. It describes itself as ahsan al-hadith, the most beautiful. So that's when it hit me like, when we think of a work of art, that's how we describe it in an aesthetic way, right? Aesthetically pleasing, we say, that man, look at that painting, it's beautiful. Or that poem was, that was amazing. That was really beautiful. That was a beautiful poem, right? When we think of beauty, we think of aesthetics. We don't necessarily think of all the time like technical scientific rules, although, well, we'll come to this, but there is a connection between beauty and truth. That's the point I want to get to, because even when you develop scientific theories, sometimes people are guided to realizing a theory is probably the correct theory just because of how beautiful it is, how well it fits together, how well it explains, how elegantly the least amount of assumptions explain the most observations, right? So elegance and beauty and all those things play into truth as well, but a lot of times we just don't connect them. So I thought it was very interesting that the Quran doesn't say a'aqal, a'aqal al-hadith. He doesn't say it's the most rational hadith. He says it's ahsan al-hadith. It's the most beautiful. And then we want to look at what is beauty in the Quran? What is ahsan in the Quran? What is the most beautiful? Because then I started realizing, and this connects to what Warner was talking about on his live, that the philosophy of beauty is all through the Quran. The Quran presents a philosophy of beauty, and not beauty in a superficial way. That's not what we're talking about. We're going to talk about what the Quran seems to be indicating by beauty. Okay? But it's really interesting that it's almost like, it's almost like Allah wants us to live in beauty. If you start thinking of all these different verses, okay, using your brain, I think it is beautiful. We're going to talk about it. So let's jump in real quick. So that's the introduction. That was the introduction, by the way. That was 30 minutes. So we're going to compare two verses. Let's go to chapter 32:7. Alhamdulillah. Chapter 32:7. So in 32:7 he says, الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه. الذي أحسن, your favorite show, alhamdulillah. الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه وبدأ خلق الإنسان من طين. Oh yeah, إن الله, I forgot that hadith. Thank you. God is beautiful and He loves beauty. إن الله جميل يحب الجمال. Good one. I forgot about that. Beautiful. See? Beautiful. By the end of this class, inshallah, I hope that we'll have a different appreciation for beauty in the Quran. Because I know in studying this today, it did give me a different appreciation of beauty in the Quran and just the Quran itself, that we're supposed to be looking for what is most beautiful, not what's most rational. Again, I'm not saying that what's rational is not also beautiful. Right? But it's interesting that Allah didn't choose that word, because there's many times in the Quran He tells us to use our intellect. So we're not saying don't use the intellect, but what we're saying is don't devalue the non-rational means of experiencing the beauty of the Quran, right? Because these things are what the Quran is designed to evoke from us, right? That feeling of beauty. Okay, well, let's talk about it more. So this verse here, 32:7, he says, الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه. The one who, they say, when they translate this, usually they say the one who perfected everything that He created. The one who perfected everything that He created. But if you look at the wording, if you listen to it, الذي أحسن. أحسن. The one who made beautiful everything He created. So that's the first thing we want to start with. That the superficial way of thinking about beauty can't be right, because He said He created everything beautiful. الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه. He created everything beautiful. Okay, how is the khalq ahsan? How is it beautiful? How is it the most beautiful, or how is it hasan? Okay, let's connect this to another verse, which is 67:3. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Look at chapter 67, verse 3. Beautiful connection here. 67, verse 3. He says, الذي خلق سبع سماوات طباقا. That the one who created the seven heavens, طباقا. طباقا, like, what's the best way to explain that? Like connected layers, basically. We'll say it like that. Tibaqan. I was trying to remember the exact meaning of the word tibaqan, the Arabic meaning. Let's look and see. Let's see what verse. What that one? That's off. That's ayin. He got some of his letters he got out of order. I want to get an exact, because I think this fits the point, so I want to get an exact meaning of this. An exact Arabic meaning of this. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. أنا مبسوط أيضا لدخولك فيها. Okay. Tibaqan. Let's get a more exact meaning before we read the rest of the verse. So, let's see. SubhanAllah, beautiful definition. So that's why I wanted to get the exact, like layers or something like that. But I wanted to get, I knew if we got a more precise Arabic definition, it would be even more beautiful. So listen to this definition. This is from Ibn Faris in Muqayis al-Lugha. He says, Aslun sahihun wahid. That tabaqa has one sound root, one sound core meaning. يدل على وضع شيء مبسوط على مثله حتى يغطيه. Okay? He says, okay, that the meaning of the word tabaqa is يدل على وضع شيء مبسوط على مثله حتى يغطيه. Okay? So tabaqa is to place something on top of something else. I was just reading some of his other definitions real quick. Okay, he says that طباقا طبقة يدل على وضع شيء مبسوط على مثله حتى يغطيه. That he says that tabaqa means to place something mabsut, like spread out, to place something spread out, ala mithlihi, on something that's just like it, hatta yughatti, until it covers it. So tabaqa means to place something like spread out, like flattened, on top of something else, right? Until on top of something similar to it. So why does he say similar to it? Because it has to all connect. So if it's too big or too small, it doesn't have tibaq. So tibaq is to place something on top of something else, spread out, that's similar to it, so it connects. Ala mithlihi hatta yughatti, until it covers it. Okay? Mustafa, he sums up, he brings a few other definitions, and then he sums it up by saying, أن الأصل الواحد, overlapping or fitting together, right? أن الأصل الواحد في هذه المادة, that the one root in this madda, in this entry, هو تقابل شيئين مع تساوي بينهما وهو قريب من التوافق. Okay? He said that the meaning, if we look at the core, like conceptual meaning of this word, that it means taqabul shay'ain, that two things kind of like face each other, ma'a tasawi baynahuma, with equality between them, wa huwa qaribun min at-tawafuq. It's close to the meaning of tawafuq. So when two things like coincide or agree with each other. Okay? So that's some of the Arabic meaning of it. All right? So sab'a samawatin tibaqan. Sab'a samawatin tibaqan. Right? 7 heavens tibaqan. Tibaqan, which are connected to each other, overlapping each other in an interconnected way. That's what it seems like it means. Especially when you look at the rest of it. This is what we're going to get up to. He said, الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا, the one who created the 7 heavens طِبَاقًا, like in layers, in overlapping layers maybe. مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِنْ تَفَاوُتٍ You do not see in the khalq, in the creation of Ar-Rahman, of any tafawut. You don't see any tafawut in the creation of Ar-Rahman. What's the word tafawut? The word tafawut is from the root fata, which means to miss something. So tafawut is the form of this word indicates a reciprocal action. Like when we say taqatul, people fighting back and forth. Tafawuts are things missing each other, misalignments. So the words in the verse go together because he says he created them tibaqan, that they perfectly overlap and are layered. ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت. You won't see any misalignment in the creation of Ar-Rahman. Everything aligns and connects together. And then he says, فَارْجِعِ الْبَصَرَ. So return your sight. هَلْ تَرَى مِنْ فُطُورٍ. Do you see any breaks? ثُمَّ ارْجِعِ الْبَصَرَ كَرَّتَيْنِ. Then return your sight, go back and look twice. Right? يَنْقَلِبُ إِلَيْكَ الْبَصَرُ خَاسِئًا وَهُوَ حَسِيرٌ. Your sight will come back khasi'an, and just fatigued. Right? You keep looking and looking and looking. In other words, you're not going to see any tafawut. You're not going to see any misalignment. Fi khalq ar-Rahman. Okay? So, now, let's connect this to ahsan. Because remember the first verse that we started with, he talked about his creation. He said, الَّذِي أَحْسَنَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ. The one who beautified or made beautiful everything that he created. And then here he says, مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ. See, when he talked about, the verse is talking about the heavens, but the end of the verse, he made it general. He said, he didn't just stick to talking about the heavens, right? He didn't say, مَا تَرَى فِيهَا مِن تَفَاوُتٍ. You don't see it in them, in the heavens. He said, مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ. Yeah, Surah Al-Mulk. You don't see in the creation of Ar-Rahman, in the creation, فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِن تَفَاوُتٍ. Any misalignment. Right? فَارْجِعِ الْبَصَرَ. Look again. هَلْ تَرَى مِن فُطُورٍ. Do you see any gaps? You don't see any breaks, any futur. It all fits together. الَّذِي أَحْسَنَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ. The one who made beautiful everything he created. So Allah knows best, but from the connection of these two verses, perhaps we can derive, and we always say perhaps because at the end of the day, only Allah knows. But this is why I like approaching the Qur'an like art, because it's mentally freeing, because you're not saying, oh, this is what it means, and you got to go do this, and if you don't do this, you're not a Muslim. It's just saying, look at the beauty of the connections of it. Let it make you think. Let it make you wonder. Let it make you reflect. Let it make you use your imagination. It's revelatory art. It's art that reveals things to you. So by comparing these two verses and putting these two verses together, one thing that stands out, perhaps potentially, is that the Quranic idea of ihsan, of doing beauty, of doing something beautiful, ahsana, or doing that which is ahsan, the most beautiful, is harmony, is for the things to fit together, in a harmonic, is that the right word? Harmonic, yeah, in a harmonic and in proportional way, for everything to be balanced and proportional and connect together. That's the beauty. That's ahsan, perhaps, right? And that's why he says in one verse to be harmonious. I said harmonic. It's harmonious. No, you're right. Now that I see the word on the screen, I realize where I messed up at. My bad. I'm trying to think of too many languages at one time. Sorry. Peace be with you too. Right? Because in one verse he says, right? الَّذِي أَحْسَنَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ. Right? He beautified everything he created. In another verse, he says, مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِن تَفَاوُتٍ. Harmonic. That's our word. Huda, that's our word. Since you rolling with me on that, that's our word. It's harmonic. Me and Huda decided. So you don't see in the creation of Ar-Rahman any tafawut, any mutual missing of parts. And then he tells us, look back again. Hal tara min futur? Do you see any breaks? ثُمَّ ارْجِعَ الْبَصَرَ كَرَّتَيْنِ. He invites us to study the creation, to see if we can find lack of harmony. He invites us, look, see if you find any futur. Find the breaks, find where things don't work, fit together. He invites us to look at the harmony of the world. So I believe, and Allah knows best, this is a Quranic ideal, to find the harmony and unity and interrelationships between things, right? Look at the similarity between this verse and the verse about the Qur'an. So let's go to that verse next. Look at the similarity between that and this verse. So this is going to be chapter 4. This is going to be chapter 4, 82. Look at the similarity between these two verses, between the idea of them. They're not exactly the same in wording, but I'm talking about in the idea. 482 and 67, the one where we just read. ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور. He says, you won't see any misalignment. Look again. ثم ارجع البصر كرتين. Then look again and again, 2 more times. Look as many times as you want. You're not going to see lack of harmony. So he invites us to look for this, right? I love you too, right? So look at how this connects to 482. Because he invites us to do the exact same thing with the Qur'an. He says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Do they not contemplate the Qur'an? See, that sounds like an invitation. أَفَلَا, right? أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do they not do this? Right? Right? Do they not do this? Do they not do tadabbur? Tadabbur? Do they not do tadabbur, contemplation of the Qur'an? If it was from other than Allah, they would have found in it ikhtilafan kathiran. They would have found much variations, right? Much divergence, right? Where things didn't fit together. You would find that a lot if it was from other than Allah. So, subhanAllah, the khalq ar-Rahman, the creation of ar-Rahman, which is ahsan and which doesn't have tafawut, is spoken about conceptually. I'm not saying in the same words, but as an idea, in the same or a similar way that the Qur'an is spoken about. That in the creation of ar-Rahman, you won't find any misalignment. Look again. He tells us, look. He invites us to look. And when it comes to the Qur'an, same thing. He invites us to contemplate, to see that it's all one unified whole, and there's not ikhtilaf and kathiran. There's not this widespread ikhtilaf within it. Beautiful, beautiful when you think about it. So when you connect those two things, or 3 things, because those were 3 verses. The first verse was الَّذِي أَحْسَنَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ. He made beautiful everything that he created. And then مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِنْ تَفَاوُتٍ. You won't find any misalignment. And then أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. If it was from other than Allah, you would find much differences and variation. Put that together with the verse that we started with. Or did we start with that verse? No, we didn't go to that verse. I quoted it, but we didn't go to it. So now let's go to it. Chapter 39. Chapter 39, verse 23. Chapter 29, verse 23. So here in this verse he says, 39:23. Here in this verse he says, Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadith. Allah sent down the most beautiful hadith, the most beautiful speech. Okay? Now, before I read the rest, now when you put all those other verses that we just read with it, for me at least, this really changes the feeling that I get when I read this. Ahsan al-hadith. It's the most beautiful hadith. It's the hadith that you can most count on to be proportionate and interconnected and not have tafawut, not have any misalignment, not have any ikhtilaf, not have much ikhtilaf and kathira, not have much ikhtilaf, much variation and divergence. This is 3923. Ahsan al-hadith, it's the most beautiful hadith. Because when things connect together, right? When you can see how things are coherent and connect together, that's intellectually satisfying, right? Why do people like solving puzzles and figuring out riddles? Like when you can put the pieces of something together, it's intellectually satisfying, right? So there's an aesthetic beauty to the unity of the Qur'an, and I think that's something that Allah is drawing us to, right? Is drawing us to think about is the aesthetic beauty of the coherence of the Qur'an and how the parts relate to each other. And that's why he says, after this, he says, Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadith kitaban mutashabihan mathani 3923. He said, Allah sent down the most beautiful hadith. So beauty from a Quranic standpoint, at least that's my theory from these verses, is not the superficial beauty, but it's the beauty of harmony, the harmony of the parts and how they all work together, right? How they all fit together, right? So he sent down the most beautiful hadith, kitaban mutashabihan. It's a book, right? That's mutashabihan. Its parts resemble each other. See, if you think about it from this angle, that's another dimension to this. Mutashabihan, its parts resemble each other because they interrelate. Mathani, they're doubled, right? I heard a brother give a really good explanation of this. There's a few different explanations that are kind of interesting about this word mathani. Mathani is the plural of mathna, which literally means something folded, right? Mathani are like the folds or the things that have been doubled, right? So one brother mentioned, and I like this explanation, that whenever you're studying something in the Quran, you like an ayah, like a verse or walaikum salam, or a word or anything like that, you'll often find its pair somewhere else. And I think we found that a lot of times in our study. I think that makes sense. Also, from this kind of theory that we're talking about today, the beauty of the coherence of the Quran. Another way of thinking about mathani is that it keeps going back on itself. Look at it keeps referring back to itself, like it keeps folding over onto itself, like it's connected. It folds back onto itself. Mathani, multiple times, right? Think about that way of thinking about it, and connect it to the ayah in Surah Al-Mulk, where he says, "Farji al-basara, thumma rji al-basara karratain." Very similar. He said, then refer your sight back 2 times, karratain. So he used a similar, the idea of doubling your sight there. And here perhaps there's something similar. It's a book that's mutashabih. Its parts resemble each other. Mathani. It always doubles back onto itself and connects back. It always connects back together, right? Perhaps that's one way of looking at it. So it's the most beautiful hadith, right? And then in this same chapter, if we go back to verse 18, verse 17 and 18, in this same chapter, he says here, at the end of verse 17, he says, فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادٍ, give glad tidings to my servants. Then he describes the servants. He says, الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. Those who listen to the word and they follow the most beautiful of it. They follow the most beautiful of it. Okay? SubhanAllah, they follow the most beautiful of it. So when you listen to the word, the part of the word, the qawl, the statement that we're supposed to follow is not just the most rational. I love you too. Not just the most rational, okay? Although we're not taking rationality out of it, obviously. That has to be a part of it. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. They have hearts by which they don't use their intellect. So of course, it's not to downplay intellect, but intellect is always talked about. You know what I mean? Like it's always people are always giving props to intellect. Intellect is important for sure, but we also want to show how there's other dimensions to studying the Quran that are also important, like beauty, like the beauty of the interpretation, right? How it fits together, how it connects together with itself, how it connects together with uh, other concepts in the Quran. Like, for example, when you talk about punishment, a lot of us have learned a lot of us have learned a fear-based version of Islam, where it's always about punishment, 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 right? So perhaps also following that which is most beautiful of it is the proportions, to keep everything proportional, where you don't just overly focus on punishment, you also have to remember all the ayat about mercy. You have to remember, كَتَبَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. Your Lord wrote upon himself, decreed upon himself, prescribed upon himself, rahmah. So that's another way of joining the book together. Not just in like the way that we do a lot of times, which is like we trace the word and see how it connects. That's one way. But another way is making the concepts in a proportional and balanced, presenting them in a proportional and balanced way. There are many verses, and I probably have said this many times, we study a verse and I might stop and say, you know what? SubhanAllah, I'm Muslim, yeah. SubhanAllah, I might say sometimes, this verse here, out of all the years I've been Muslim, I never heard anyone emphasize it. I've said that I'm not talking about a specific verse now, but I'm just giving an example of the lack of balance sometimes in the way that we approach, study, present the Qur'an. That a lot of times, wa alaikum salam, it's presented disproportionately, right? So part of the ahsan nature of following it is to present things proportionally, right? And proportionally doesn't mean equally balanced. It means if Allah said he wrote mercy on himself, at least this is how I think about it. If Allah says he wrote mercy on himself, right? Prescribed mercy on himself, why didn't he say كَتَبَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الْعَذَابِ, that Allah prescribed punishment upon himself? So it's almost as if, to me, that the principle of mercy should be a lens through which we interpret everything else. That's another way that we make it ahsan, beautiful, by remembering that Allah wrote mercy on himself. If we depend on the opinion that you take on Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, if you think that's a part of the Quran or not, but whatever the case, it's written in the Mus'haf, and when we recite, we start from that. Every surah that we read, except for Surah Tawbah, every surah that we read, we're reminded of the mercy of Allah. And the word Rahim, merciful, in reference to Allah, is 114 times in the Quran. And the word Ar-Rahman is half of that, 57, right? And 57 is the number of the surah al-hadith, iron. So maybe, and what did Allah do with iron for Dawood? He softened it. So perhaps, and this is just, we're just reflecting, looking at the Quran as art. That's it. We're just noticing the beauty of it. Look at the beauty that Rahim is 114 times, merciful. Ar-Rahman is half of that, is 57, right? So perhaps, because if you look at the word Ar-Rahman in the Quran, a lot of people just associate that also with mercy, right? But if you look at the name Ar-Rahman and how it's, alhamdulillah, and how it's used in the Quran, right? It's not used usually in context of mercy, right? It's used a lot of times, no, I don't want to say a lot of times, but there are times when it's used in the context of punishment, right? Ibrahim told his father, Inni akhafu an yamassaka adabun min ar-Rahman. I fear that a punishment from ar-Rahman would befall you. So ar-Rahman isn't always used in the context of like showing mercy. So perhaps that's why it's half of Rahim in the Quran. It's 57. Well, Rahim is 114, right? Because 57 corresponds to iron, right? So perhaps making it half of Rahim is the softening of the conception of Allah, like iron is softened. That the conception of Allah should be softer. But unfortunately, we think of Allah like iron. That's just a thought. I'm not saying that's what the Quran means or it was said like that for that reason. I'm just reflecting and saying like maybe we approach the Quran disproportionately. And that's why we learn this fear-based way of we're almost scared to read it. We're almost scared to think about it. right? So when you replace that, he didn't say فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَخْوَفَهُ. They follow the most fearful part of it. فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَتْقَاهُ. They follow the most taqwa of it, the part of it that has the most taqwa, right? فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَخْشَاهُ. The part of it that has the most khashya. He said فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. In the same chapter, they follow what's most beautiful, the most beautiful way of putting it together. In the same chapter that he says and refers to it as ahsan al-hadith, the most beautiful of hadith. SubhanAllah. Let's look at some other verses, because from this thought process, I started realizing more and more, the more I thought about it and the more I studied it, I started realizing that the way perhaps that Allah wants us, like our way of being, the way that we should be in the world, is in the most beautiful way. And subhanAllah, that's why I said this is a kind of like a compliment to what Warner was talking about today, because what Warner was saying today on his live, I think, was really important. The message he was saying was really important. And it kind of actually helped me out too. That's why, subhanAllah, it's good to listen to all kind of different people, because we all need to remind each other, we're all companions in this journey. Like, if you think about, this is a really beautiful word in the Qur'an. If you think about what we do here, like in our studies and videos and our lives, all that type of stuff, it's really suhbah. It's companionship, right? Because it's not really like, there's information being shared, but it's not like the traditional like teacher-student kind of relationship. It's more like suhbah. It's more like companionship. And think about how Allah referred to the Prophet in the Quran. مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى. He called him their companion. He said, your companion didn't go astray. وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. Right? Your companion is not crazy. He said, مَا بِصَاحِبِكُمْ مِنْ جِنَّةٍ. Your companion doesn't have any jinnah, right? So, right, when he said, إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ, when they were in the cave, the second of two, إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ, when he said to his companion, right? So we are, subhanAllah, we are companions of each other. So we need to remind each other. فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So remind, because the reminder benefits the believer. I want to tell you exactly how Warner helped me. I'm going to tell you, I want to share this with you. Because yesterday I made some videos about, in response, or just giving my perspective about this, the kind of the trending topic, the Salafi to Qur'anist pipeline, as they call it, right? So I think personally I have some insight on that, because I was Salafi for like 20 years. So I have some insight, because I think the way that it was being presented, I think, was almost like in a negative way. And I actually see it in a different way. I see it in a more positive way. So I have some insight into that I wanted to share. So I made some videos sharing that. But I still, subhanAllah, I still wasn't sure if I was comfortable, because that's not really my type of video. Like, usually I mainly focus just on sharing the beauty of the Quran, right? That's my main focus. Every now and then, if I feel like really compelled for something to speak about something, then I will. But usually I try to just stick to sharing the Quran. Thank you. So what I noticed was those videos drew some energy that I really don't like. That's not really for my page. That's not really what my page is for. So I had like a little bit of a dilemma. I was like, should I keep those videos up? And I was kind of going back and forth in my mind. So first, like, I privated them. I was like, yeah, I don't really want that energy. Like, that's not my thing. So I privated them. And then this morning, I kind of was like, nah, forget that, man. I'm gonna leave them up there. I'm gonna unprivate them. So I unprivated them for about 10 minutes. And I came in, I was out doing something. I came home. I went on TikTok. I unprivated them. Then I scrolled for a second. I seen Warner's live, and I started listening. And Warner gave this speech at the end that completely changed my mind about those videos. Warner gave a speech about how we should present the Quran. Yeah, it is. How we should present the Quran. Hold on, let's see what this is. He gave a speech about how we should present the Quran, right? And how, like, our intention isn't like to get on and like bash hadith and all that other stuff, because then people start, then people just get this idea that you're just like bashing the Prophet Muhammad. That Warner basically said like the best way is to do what's most beautiful, right? To just show them the beauty of the Qur'an. That's all we want to do. And immediately I jumped out the live. I went to my page and I privated the videos again. I said he's absolutely right. I said that's tafawut with who I am, like with who I am and what I'm trying to present. Now that don't mean I won't fall off here and there because I'm human too. You know what my dude Jay-Z say? If you don't like Jay-Z, I'm sorry. I know he's a Zionist. He's with Illuminati. I know. Please don't attack me. It's just certain lines he say. I was a Jay-Z fan for a long time. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm just so used to every time I say something, it's like and it's go crazy. But one thing he said was, he said sometimes you need your ego. You got to remind these fools, right? Sometimes you need your ego. You got to remind these fools. So sometimes, I get into my bag a little bit and I be like, I got to remind these fools who they talking to. Like, I know my shit a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But then I realized, like, nah, that ain't really what this about. You know what I mean? But we all go through that. And that's a characteristic. And that's why I'm sharing it, because I'm being very, Walaikum Salam, I wanted to be very, very honest and transparent and vulnerable, because I want you to see. Because I always say, yeah, I did. Because I always say about how much you guys help me too, and at the end of every live, I say, love you guys, I appreciate you guys. You guys help me a lot, and I wanted to give you this practical example because this is like a real life example where I was legitimately struggling with something, and Warner kind of helped me figure it out. So like when Warner reflected it back to me, and then in that discussion, he mentioned me. He was like, yeah, Ben, like we have like just like on Ben's page, like we have our lives and we learn about the Quran, and I kind of felt a little dumb because I was like, damn, I'm going back and forth about these videos, and really, like, all people want is the beauty of the Quran, So I kind of was like, yeah, I don't want to leave those. That's not what I want. That's not what I want to do, So it was a very real example of like how Warner really, really helped me. So I appreciate like what you're doing, Warner. Like, he said that he hasn't been going live, but like with everything going on, with all the different controversies and like attacking, extremely attacking some of our Muslim sisters, he wanted to be a voice of reason and try to like bring some conversations, just have some conversations about it. And I respect that, I appreciate that you're taking the time to do that. And I think each of us has to contribute in our own way. Like we all have different things that we can contribute, right? And if we want to see a different vibe in the world, if we want to see a different vibe in the, it is disgusting, in the Muslim TikTok space, we have to be different. Like we have to be the light. We have to be the siraj and munira, as Allah describes the Prophet, siraj and munira, a lamp that gives light, right? We have to be that. So I appreciate, Warner, what you did and how you helped me. You really brought a lot of peace to my heart, because I was really like, I was really struggling with that, because certain things, like I feel things very deeply. So some of this stuff, it's a little bit annoying, and like you want to speak, and and there's nothing wrong with speaking. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I was conflicted about what more fit like who I am and the way that I want to approach it. So Warner, actually helped me like kind of work that out in my head, and I appreciate that. So that's a little intermission in the class. Now we're going to go back to the class, inshallah. That's like the class within the class. So what I realized, though, this is why I said all that, is that the Quran, hold on, they got the puzzle time coming. Give me 1 second. Okay. So what I realized was, yes, the Quran, and when we contemplate it, the al-qawl, the statement, the word, when we contemplate it, right? We should co-host. Yeah, we could probably do that one day. For sure. Alhamdulillah, for sure. So yeah, because it's like, man, bro, like I'm sure you do, and other people that create content, especially the type of content that we create that's a little bit different than mainstream. We deal with our fair share of hate, and usually I'm pretty good at like brushing it off. But I don't know, like yesterday, bro, it was just like I don't know what it was. It was just like really, really bothering me, like getting to me a lot. Um, let's have a Warner podcast. Yeah, that actually is not a bad idea. Good idea. Um, so I don't know. I was like really conflicted about my approach and like how I wanted to go about it. But when I heard Warner's speech, and then what really kind of sealed it for me after Warner's speech was, I mentioned this earlier in the live if you were here, that one of the people that was on that panel, they were talking and they were making points, but all their points they were reciting verses from the Qur'an to support it. And I was like, to be honest, I'm sitting here now, I don't remember all the points that he made, but hearing the verses brought me peace. And I was like, I think I commented in the chat. I said, man, it's nice hearing the verses. And I think not Ibrahim. I call it, because I looked at it. I was going to say, why did I say Ibrahim? I think Warner said something similar. So the more, actually I'm glad, and this is how like something good could come out of something bad, because I'm glad that I had that day or so where I wasn't feeling like all the way good emotionally, because it made me realize how much peace the Quran brings me. Because when I was hearing the verses, it just like really like cooled my chest. Like I was just like, man, I could feel the difference, right? So yeah, alhamdulillah, I appreciate you doing that, man. Keep doing what you're doing. And if y'all see the brother live, man, support him. Inshallah, go check him out. But from that, I want to go back to this discussion, because from that I start realizing from this discussion about ahsan al-hadith, the most beautiful hadith, I started realizing that this standard, this idea of beauty, is something Allah talks about all through the Quran. So the Quran even wants our presence to be aesthetically pleasing. And again, I don't mean in a superficial way. I don't mean just by how you superficially look, right? Everybody can't, no, I'm just playing. No, but I'm not talking about that, right? I'm talking about something similar to what we were saying about the book itself. Harmony and unity and proportion and balance, right? So for example, let's look at, let's see. Let's go to 61:125. We're going to go to a few different verses. Take pride, inshallah. 16:125. So 16:125, he says, Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah, call to the way of your Lord with wisdom, wal maw'izatil hasana, and beautiful exhortation. Look the word hasana. Look at these words, hikmah, wisdom. And what does the word hikmah mean? Okay, we've talked about this before when we talked about kitabun uhkimat ayatuhu, that the root of hikmah, hakama, it comes from in Arabic, or it's related to in Arabic, the bridle or the bit that you put in the mouth of like a horse, for example, to control it, to regulate its movement. So hikmah, which comes from that's why they say the root hakama means to prevent, because you're preventing like chaotic movement. So the word hikmah has to do with control and regulation, discipline, self-control, emotional regulation. Call to the way of your Lord with hikmah, right? Beautiful, beautiful. Then he said, wal maw'izatil hasana, and beautiful exhortation. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and do jadal with them, jidal with them. They say argue, debate with them in a way that is most beautiful. Now, what is the way that is most beautiful? Hold on, I want to read you another definition. If I'm remembering this correctly, come with me to my bookshelf real quick. I think it's volume 4. Nope, not 4, volume 3. One more back. Yes, 2. All right, volume 2. So I remember reading the Arabic root for the word jadal that we translate as argument or debate. So I want to read that for you real quick, inshallah, if it's what I'm remembering, because it adds to, subhanAllah, it adds to the discussion a lot. So let me see. Okay, like for example, in Lisan al-Arab they say, or the author says in Lisan al-Arab, the root meaning of the word jadal, which is used for argumentation or debate, inshallah, God bless you too, right? Is shiddatul fatal. Shiddatul fatal. Wa jadaltul habal ajdiluhu jadalan idha shadidta fatlahu wa fataltahu fatlan muhkaman. Okay? He says al-jadal is to bind something very tightly. Wa jadaltul habal, like for example, jadaltul habal, wa alaikum salam. Like when you weave a rope, you know how you put the rope together, how it weaves. Jadaltu or jadalta, jadal or jadaltu, sorry, habal. أجديله جدلا إذا شددت فتله وفتلته فتلا محكما. So when you bind a rope, very muhkam. Look, he even used the word muhkam, very tightly intertwined. That's the meaning of the word jadal in Arabic. Okay, that we translate as argumentation. So even Mustafawi says, هو الاستحكام في امتداد. That it is istihkam with imtidad. So istihkam is from that same word hakama, to try to make something interconnected and intertwined. Fi imtidad, while something is extended, like a rope, right? A rope extends out, but it's intertwined tightly together. So he said, huwa al-istihkam fi imtidad. It is this really tight intertwining with being extended. That's the root meaning of the word jadal, which is translated as debate or argue. Now, I think that's very, very, very interesting, right? Because when we combine that with what we've been studying about the word ahsan, right? The most beautiful, which from comparing the different verses, inshallah, it seems like we can perhaps think of ahsan as that which is most interconnected, most relationally satisfying, most aesthetically pleasing in its harmony of the parts is ahsan. So when he says here, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, bind them in a way that's most beautiful, right? Why does the word that we use for jadal, right? Or, okay, subhanAllah, hair braid. Thank you for adding that. SubhanAllah. See how that fits together? So why is the word for debate or argument? Why is the Arabic meaning of it to intertwine something very tightly? Because, and then why in the Qur'an is it connected to, when he tells us about it, right? Billati hiya ahsan, in a way that is most beautiful. Perhaps he's telling us that the most beautiful form of jadal is the jadal that brings people together, not that separates people. And most debating and arguing, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on, I'm going to show my UK knowledge here a little bit, whether it's at Speaker's Corner, whatever the case might be, most of it, in my opinion, just from what I can see, isn't billati hiya ahsan. It's not in a way that's most beautiful. It's not in a way that's unifying, that's creating harmony. It's in a way that's doing actually the opposite, right? So the word jadal, the fact that it means to intertwine, and then it's connected with the word ahsan, perhaps that tells us something about how we're supposed to approach debate, okay? Like, for example, I work with one-on-one quite a few different people. And one of the things that we do is we discuss different ways of looking at things because they have certain things that they're trying to work through. So I just try to present like, okay, what if we looked at it like this, or could be another way of looking at it. But they don't just accept what I say blindly. They push back and they say, well, what about this? And how does this work? But they're not doing it in a way to be argumentative. They're really trying to learn. They're trying to work through their own thought process. So at the end, a lot of times we'll come to some medium where they'll either be like, I can kind of see what you're saying, but I need to think about this point. Or they might say, I get what you're saying. That makes sense, but I don't know. I don't really agree with that. Right. So whatever the case, the learning experience becomes a type of jadal, a type of intertwining of our thought processes because we're learning from each other. So it doesn't mean like, I don't take it as mean. I think this is a different way that you can look at it. It doesn't necessarily mean how we see it applied all the time. Just debates usually is just a display of toxic masculinity, right? That's why we use terms. If you think about it, a lot of men use terms that are the same kind of terminology that we would use in fighting. He ran from me. He was destroyed, right? All these different types of things, right? So a lot of times it's not really to do jadal. It's not really to intertwine, and it's definitely not billati hiya ahsan in the most beautiful way, right? So the way that Allah, the teaching that Allah gives us to approach even disagreements and dialogues is in the most beautiful way, the way that connects things together. Okay, let's go to another verse, 1753. Yeah, exactly. 1753 is our next verse. So this verse, really beautiful verse. وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي, he says, and say to my servants, يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, that they should say what is most beautiful. Why? Look at the next verse. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْزَغُ بَيْنَهُمْ. Truly, shaitan seeks to cause enmity and like division and corruption amongst. He tries to corrupt amongst them. This same word, nazagha. Look at how ahsan, subhanallah. Look at how ahsan is exactly related to splitting things up. Because where is this used? Where is this word nazagha used? Where's another place that it's used? It's used in the story of Yusuf. Yusuf said it about him and his brothers. Min ba'di an nazagha shaytanu bayni wa bayna ikhwati. He said, after shaitan nazagha bayni wa bayna ikhwati, like ruined the relationship, corrupted the relationship between me and my brothers. And we know what happened. The brothers threw him in a well. They were separated, right? And well, I'll get to that. That's going to take us off. I'll get to that point next. But just think about that. It's the same word, nazagha. And here, the word nazagha, this is 1753, is followed, or I'm sorry, the word nazagha, right before it is ahsan. وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and say to my servants that they should say that which is most beautiful. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْزَغُ بَيْنَهُمْ. Truly, shaitan wants to ruin the relationships between them. So saying that which is ahsan, that which is most beautiful, is maintaining the connections. You see what I'm saying? So the more you look at the different verses, the more it, to me at least, becomes clearer that beauty from the perspective of the Qur'an is about relationships and connections. Okay, let's go to another verse. Let's go to 23:14. He says, ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين. So he says, then we created the nutfa to an alaqa, and the alaqa to a mudgha, and the mudgha to bones, and we clothed the bones with flesh. then we brought it forth as another creation. So the point that I want you to see from this verse is that he's talking about putting the parts together, right? The nutfa, the alaqa, the mudgha, the bones, the flesh. He puts all these parts together, and then at the end of the verse he says, "Thumma ansha'nahu." Then he brings it about as khalqan akhar, as another creation. Fatabarakallah. So blessed is Allah, ahsanul khaliqeen, the most beautiful of the creators. So he mentions ahsan after talking about how he puts us together piece by piece. So the interrelationship between the parts. Okay, let's go to 2396. Not every verse with ahsan, I don't know if every verse is as clear that ahsan has to do with putting together the parts. But some of the verses I picked because I want to also add the point that that yeah, that man, my bad. That the way that the way that Allah wants us to live is in a way that's most beautiful, right? That beauty in this interconnected, harmonious way, this aesthetically pleasing way, is an ideal of the Qur'an. Okay, so it's not just about the intellect. A lot of people just focus on the intellect. The intellect is important, but also it's about creating experiences for people. This is one of the biggest things that I learned probably in the last couple years, right? And recently, after probably the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's really hit me a lot more. One of the biggest things that's really important for us to do with other people is creating experiences. Because when you think about people who are customers, for example, in certain businesses, they don't always just want the product. Of course, they want the product, but they want the experience that goes along with it. Either they relate it to something that, they connect with something bigger because of advertising and marketing and all that, or it's the relationship or the interaction with the people who are delivering the product, right? But the experience of consuming the product is part of it. It's not just the product itself, right? Just think if you went to a restaurant and the whole restaurant was filthy except for your table and the kitchen. So you couldn't say the food was dirty because the kitchen is spotless. It's clean. But the rest of it's dirty and it smells. Your table is fine. And they brought you out your food and it looked fine. It looked delicious. It was exactly what you want to eat. But you could still smell the other stuff. The experience of that isn't as, even if you still ate it, I might still ate it because I'm a foodie. But the overall experience isn't the same. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not just the food itself. It's the experience. It's the way that the staff talks to you when you go in there, your server, it's the lighting, it's the smell, the sound, the look. All of that experience, I call it the server for a purpose. Because waiter usually a lot in English, what language am I speaking now? Is it Arabic? I got confused. Usually a lot of times when we say waiter, most people assume it's a male. And then if it's not, we say waitress. But I think that's kind of like sexist language. So I think server, usually in the US, in a lot of places, we refer to it as a server. So that's why, because it makes it more neutral, where it's not waiter or waitress. It's a neutral term that you can use for either gender. So I got confused. But my point is, it's the whole experience. So that's why I want to share these verses with ahsan, because yes, it's about the harmony, it's about all of that, but it's also to remind us that, there's a saying that I read one time where somebody said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So a lot of times we think it's just purely overwhelming people with our logic, Oh, see, this here and look here. And that's why this is right. But a lot of times that's not what convinces people. It's the experience, right? If you want to really have an impact on people, let people see that you care first. And then once they see that you care, they would be more willing to be open to listening to you. And that doesn't mean they're going to always agree with you, but it's a more ahsan, it's a more beautiful way of approaching them, than to just try to dominate them with rationality, right? Because at the end of the day, we are emotional beings, right? We respond to emotional connections. But look at this verse here. He says, "Idfa billati hiya ahsanu sayyi'a nahnu a'lamu bima yasifun." He said, repel or push away with that which is more beautiful, the sayyi'ah, the evil or negative thing. Nahnu a'lamu bima yasifun. We are more knowing of what they describe. Listen to this verse and the next verse, the next two verses. Really, really beautiful, really lines up a lot with what Warner said. And it's really, if we can remember these verses, subhanAllah, if I were to remember these verses, maybe I wouldn't have been going through that conflict in my head, because these verses speak exactly to that. Idfa billati hiya ahsan as-sayyi'ah. Repel the sayyi'ah, repel the negative or the evil or the bad with that which is ahsan. Not just with that which is hasana, not just with that which is good or beautiful, but with that which is ahsan. That which is a more unified response, right? That's what makes it more beautiful, perhaps. It's more unified in a sense of like unifying between you and the person, unifying between you and the greater universe around you and the laws and principles that it's based on, and unifying in yourself. It's more beautiful for yourself because you're not being your responses, as we're going to see from the next verse. This supports this. What I'm saying, that your responses aren't dictated by other people. Okay, that's a place to get to. I'm not even saying that I'm there yet. I'm working on it, but I have my days too. Sometimes you need your ego, got to remind these fools who they messing with. Like, we got weapons too. That's what my dude Jay said. I know, Zionists, Illuminati. I know. Don't attack me. Don't attack me. I promise. I promise. I'm sorry. So he said, repel evil with that which is more beautiful, that which is most beautiful, right? Nahnu a'lamu bima yasifun. We know best of what they describe you with, in other words. And you know what, subhanAllah, one of the things that kind of was bothering me is like the way one of the comments I read, the way somebody described me. I was like, man, it's a very weird thing to like see yourself through someone's eyes when they look at you in an evil way. It's a little bit scary, especially if you're an empath. I think I'm probably an empath because I tend to like feel things very deeply, and I tend to be able to like take on other people's perspectives. Like, I can kind of see through their eyes sometimes. So what this person said to me, I saw myself through their eyes, and I was like, damn, that's kind of scary, bro. You know what I'm saying? And I talked to my wife about it, and I said, and I told her, about it, and she said, that's because that's who they are. They're projecting that onto you. And I was like, why you gotta be smarter than me all the time? I already can't find my socks, right? And now you gotta be smarter than me too? I already need you to find everything for me. Can I just have one thing, bro? Can it just be one thing that you're not smarter than me at? Jeez, she got to be so smart. But the reason I think that's profound, and the reason I'm sharing that personal experience of how I felt, is because no matter how tough we want to appear, or no matter how unbothered we want to appear, right? Or how unbothered we actually try to be. It's not just appearing, but we actually try to like not focus on those things. We're all still human, and it affects all of us. And I think that's a good lesson to share, because sometimes people tell me, they use my example and they talk about like my demeanor and my personality, but I think they take that alaikum salam as like nothing ever affects me, but like, no, that's not the case. I just try to work on. It reminds me of a story that somebody told about Kendrick Lamar, one of his dudes. They said people think Kendrick is like this like cool, good, calm dude. He said, nah, that's just him working on himself. He said, man, I'd have been in tour buses with dude where he's about to fight people and all type of stuff, man. He's just working on himself. Like, don't get it twisted, So that's how I feel about myself. Like, I aspire to be like, I have a picture in my mind of like the type of person that I aspire to be, right? And I try to work on that every day. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing these lives, because it helps me work on the type of person that I want to be, right? And then I think that when you do that every day, it wires your brain, But that doesn't mean like you still don't have to work on yourself. That doesn't mean that certain things won't still affect you, right? So I think like that's a good lesson. So when we read these verses here, idfa billati hiya ahsan, repel evil, repel evil with that which is more beautiful. Nahnu a'lamu bima yasifun. We are more knowing of what they describe. We know better about what they describe than you do. And then look at the next verse. This is why I said part of the meaning. Yeah, we are all alike in this life. Absolutely. That's why I said it's suhbah, it's companionship. Absolutely. We're ashab. Ashabullah. We got to think of a name for us in this life. Ashab what? I got to think about that. Ashab. I don't know. Somebody think of something. Yeah, so the next verse, this is 2396. That's what I've been reading, 2396. So I'm going to read it again so we can reorient ourselves, right? He says, idfa' billati hiya ahsanu sayyi'a. Repel evil with that which is more beautiful. Nahnu a'lamu bima yasifun. We are more knowing about what they describe. And I said earlier that I think part of the meaning here of ahsan is the most beautiful, is not allowing your responses to be dictated by the person. And that's because of the next verse. Look what he says in the next verse. وَقُلْ رَبِّي أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ. And say, my Lord, I seek refuge in you from hamazat ash-shayateen, the prodding of the devils. You know this word hamaza, right? Hamaza. Yeah, you could, because he said, say it. وَقُلْ, say, Rabbi, أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ رَبِّي أَنْ يَحْضُرُونَ. Right? And say, my Lord, I seek refuge in you from the hamazat of the shayateen, the hamazat, the prodding. This word comes from, like you ever see like cowboys, or I don't know, maybe you're farm people. I'm not a farm person, so you might have it. But like, the little spur on the boot and you hit the side of the horse, like, ah, I guess that's how you do it. To make it go. That's how this word relates. Hamazat. The shayateen hit you, make you go, make you react. وَقُلْ رَبِّي أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ. I seek refuge in you from the prodding of the devils. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ رَبِّي أَنْ يَحْضُرُونَ. And I seek refuge in you, my Lord, that they should be in my presence. And yahdurun. A lot of times they translate yahdurun as that they should come near me. But he didn't say yaqrubun. He said, yahdurun, hudur, hadara, that they be in my presence. They present themselves to me. SubhanAllah. What a beautiful book. So look at the context of living and repelling and pushing away evil with that which is ahsan, and seeking refuge with our Lord from being pushed by the devils, by being made to react by the devils. SubhanAllah. Okay? Let's go to 2533. And there's many verses with ahsan, by the way. I just picked up what I thought was a good little selection of them, because I just want to show that I think from a Quranic standpoint, the way that we're supposed to be living life is ahsan, is in a way that's ahsan. By the way, I meant to mention this when we were talking about jadal, but there's a debate or argumentation. There's also a hadith that says, I forgot it. Ana za'imun, that's it. Ana za'imun bi baytin fi rabad al-jannah liman taraka al-jidal wa in kana muhiqqan. That I guarantee a house in the outskirts of Jannah, liman taraka al-jidal, for the one who leaves arguing, walau kana muhiqqan, even if he is right, even if he's correct. So this, like, I meant to mention this earlier, so I'm kind of doubling back, doubling back. But like this whole like conception of like what argumentation or debate is not necessarily in accordance with like how the Qur'an and even the hadith presents it. So that's just something to think about. But let's go to this verse here, 25:33, and let's go to the verse before it, which is 25:32. Ahlu tadabbur, ashabu tadabbur. I like the word ashab because I think that's what we really are, companions. Ashabu tadabbur. I don't know. We're gonna think about it. We should vote on it. It shouldn't just be one person's decision. So we should come up with some proposed ways that we can refer to the ashab, the companions here, and vote on which one we want. All right, but until we figure that out, let's read these verses. 25, 32, and 33. In 32, he says, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنُ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدَةً أَصْحَابُ الْإِحْسَانِ. I like that. أَصْحَابُ الْإِحْسَانِ. The companions of Ihsan. I like that actually. But I still want to vote on it. Let's keep our options open. Every time you guys give me one, I'm gonna write it down. Hold on. So number one is Ashabul Ihsan. And then once I get enough of them, we'll vote on it. Ashab al Ihsan. That's number one. Alright, so let's keep going. So let's read these verses. He says, Ashabul Basira. I like that. Ashabul Basira. The companions of insight. So, Basira. Al-Bahithuna an al-Haq. But we want to use the word ashab in it. I like that too. Only because I think it gives a really good vibe to like what we actually do. Ooh, Ashabul Nur. Companions of the light. Nice. So we got Ashabul Ihsan, Ashabul Basira, Ashabul Nur. So far. We'll vote, inshallah. Maybe in a couple of days we'll keep collecting them. Ashabul Nur. You like that one too? I like it too. Ashabul Nur. That's a nice one. And it's easy. It's kind of easy to say too. Ashabul Nur. Like Ashabul Ihsan, it takes a little bit to say it. Ashabul Nur. Yeah, that actually is nice. Okay, let's keep thinking about it, inshallah. All right. So let's read these verses now. 25:32. وقال الذين كفروا لولا نزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة أصحاب الهدى. And those who do kufr say, why was not the Qur'an sent down jumlatan wahida, like all in one bulk? Why was not the Qur'an sent down all in one bulk? Ashabul Barakah. Man, you guys are giving some good ones. Barakah. كذلك لنثبت به فؤادك. أصحاب الذكر. كذلك لنثبت به فؤادك ورتلناه ترتيلا. So those who did kufr, Ashab al-Huda, yeah, I wrote that one. Those who did kufr say, why was not the Qur'an sent down in one bulk, like all at one time? Okay? So this is an objection that those who did kufr have against the Qur'an. Then Allah responded, كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Like that, likewise, we did it like that in order to make your heart firm. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. And we did tartil of it. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. What is وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا? So let's get another book. Well, I'm getting a lot of exercise today. Let's see. Volume 4. It's in volume 4. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. So وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. So, subhanAllah, it's a beautiful word. So, for example, in Al-Raghib al-Asfahani's book, he defines the root ra, ta, and lam as ittisaqu shay wa intidamuhu ala istiqama. Okay, yuqalu rajulun ratilul asnan. Okay, this is how the word ratal is used in Arabic. That it means ittisaqu shay, for something to like have ittisaq, so like symmetry, like harmony, wantidamuhu, and to be like regulated into like an orderly system, ala istiqama, in an upright way. Okay, so that's why he said yuqalu. It's said in Arabic, rajulun ratilu al asnan, a person who his teeth are ratil, meaning they're straight. His teeth are straight and organized. They call that in Arabic ratil. Okay, so that's the usage of it in Arabic. Let's see. SubhanAllah. So yeah, like if you look at a lot of the other definitions, they kind of seem to revolve around the same meaning, right? So it has the ideas of like organizing something, being organized, putting together something in a regulated, organized way, right? That's some of the root of ratala, right? وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا, right? Okay, so when he says this is 25:32, when he says those who did kufr, because this wording of tartil is only 2 times in the Qur'an. Okay, and they translate them differently both times. How do they translate them here? Let's see how they translate it here. 25:32. So in this translation, he says we enunciated, or we brought it by steps and distinctly. Okay, but in the other place that this word is used, tartil, they translate it differently. Usually, they said, alhamdulillah, they translate it as because it's in reference in the other place. So let me show you the other place. The other place is in that's Muzammil. So in Muzammil, he says, Ya ayyuhal muzammil, O al muzammil, qum al-layla illa qalila, stand up at night except a little, nisfahu aw inqus minhu qalila, half of it or decrease from it a little, aw zid alayhi, or increase it, warattil al-Qur'ana tartila, and do rattil al-Qur'an, like do tartil of the Quran, tartilan, like so it's like an additional emphasis, but he's saying like do tartil of the Quran. So these are the only 2 places in the Quran that the word tartil is found. Okay, and that was Muzammil. Muzammil is what? Let's get a different translation. What did I do with the? Because I want to see how they translate it. I think they'll translate it in more of a traditional way. So Muzammil So Muzammil is, let's see, what chapter was that? So Muzammil, here's how he translates it here. So this is in Muzammil. He says, and recite the Qur'an in a slow, pleasant tone and style. Recite the Qur'an in a slow, pleasant tone and style. That's how the Noble Qur'an translates وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. But look, if you look at how they translate 2532, I would almost be willing to bet money that they don't translate that in the same way, although it's the exact same words. And these are the only two places in the Qur'an. 2532, he says, وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. They said, and we have revealed it to you gradually in stages. Okay, same translation, same book, same wording, basically. The only two places that the word is used and translated two completely different ways. One way, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, recite the Qur'an in rhythmic tones. And then here when he says, those who did kufr say, why was not the Qur'an sent down upon him all in one bulk? He said, that's how we keep your heart firm. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. And we do tartil of it. Right? So in one place they say rhythmic tones, one place they say in stages. Okay? So that's why I think the Arabic meaning of it helps us a lot. Because we just read that the core meaning of it in Arabic is harmony, ittisaq shay wa intidamuhu ala istiqama. It is the harmony of something and it being put together in a regulated, systematic way, ala istiqama, upon uprightness, right? So it has to do with, again, harmony of how things fit together, like the teeth. They said, رَجُلٌ رَتِلِ الْأَسْنَانِ. رَجُلٌ رَتِلِ الْأَسْنَانِ. Someone who has very straight and like organized teeth is called ratil. So that's the meaning of tartil. That's the easy way to remember the meaning of tartil. Okay? So alhamdulillah, I love you too. So how does it relate here? How's it being used here and how's it being used in the other verse? Okay? So I want to explain at least how I think of it. So let's start here. So what are those who are doing kufr like? What are they objecting to? They're objecting to the Qur'an being sent down in pieces. They're saying it should be all at once. Why is it not all at once? Why is it in pieces? And Allah gave the reason for it, and then He added something to it. He said the reason for it is to keep your heart firm. So it comes down in pieces to keep your heart firm, meaning, at least what I take from it is, that it gives you the exact peace that you need to connect to your life in that exact moment, to keep your heart firm. Because if how's it going to keep your heart firm if it doesn't relate to what you're experiencing, right? So it has to relate in some way. So we do this, we don't bring it all at once because it's not a book that's supposed to be understood like that. It's not a book that you're supposed to be like, here, take this whole book. Read that whole book real quick, right? It's a book that's supposed to be processed in pieces as it fits your life and as it strengthens your heart. And that's why he said, وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. We brought it with tartil. We brought it with deep organization and a systematic way of putting it together and connecting it to the real experiences of your life. That's how I take it, because the word tartil means to make something harmonious and systematically organized, like the straightening of the teeth, right? And he mentions that right after he talked about, like he gave that as a further explanation of revealing it in pieces. You see what I'm saying? That he did tartil of it. He did it in an organized way. So organized meaning what? Meaning it fits exactly the stages of your life and what you're experiencing, in my opinion. So in the other verse, when he says, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, like if you go to the next verse after that, what does he say after that? سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. When he tells them stand at night, all these different things, and he says, do tartil of the Qur'an, إِنَّ سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We will send down upon you a weighty, a heavy word. So he's preparing for us to bear this heavy word that we're going to carry. So right before that, he tells us, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. How do you prepare to carry this heavy word? Tartil of the Qur'an. It's not just reciting in rhythmic tones, although if you want to recite in rhythmic tones, I love to recite in rhythmic tones. It's beautiful. It feels good. It feels nice. But I don't think that's the primary meaning of it. Like, yeah, that could be one layer, but I think it's telling us in the same way that Allah brought the Qur'an in these installments that exactly fits the circumstances that the people who it was being sent to were experiencing, and it strengthened their heart. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا إِنَّ سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. You also need to, when you study the Qur'an, you also need to take it in pieces and connect it to the experiences of your life. And that way it prepares you for carrying the heavy word. And that's why a couple verses later he says, إِنَّ لَكَ فِي النَّهَارِ سَبَحًا طَوِيلًا. In the daytime you have a lot of work. So that's why he said at night, because let's go back and look at that chapter again. Look at the sequence. He says, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Stand at night except for a little bit. نِصْفَهُ أَوْ انْقُصْ مِنْهُ قَلِيلًا أَوْ زِدْ عَلَيْهِ. Half of it or less than it or increase. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. And do tartil of the Qur'an. إِنَّا سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We will throw upon you a weighty word. Inna nashi'ata layli hiya ashaddu wat'an wa aqwamu qila. The riser, this phrasing is interesting. There's different debate about what it means. Inna nashi'ata layl, nashi'a, because it's feminine. So what is nashi'a? The riser of the night, but it's feminine though. So what does that mean? Like in Arabic, it's a feminine word. So is it the soul, the nafs, nafs nashia? What's the meaning of the riser at night? Because usually when they translate it, they don't translate it literally. They say the rising at night, right? But it's literally the rising of the night. The riser of the night. Nashia of the night. Here ashaddu wat'an is more intense in its wata. It's more intense in its step, its impact. وَأَقْوَمُ قِيلًا. And it's more upright in its statement, right? إِنَّ لَكَ فِي النَّهَارِ سَبَحًا طَوِيلًا. You have a lot of work during the day. You have long work during the day. So the general lesson, to me at least, what I get from these verses is not like, hey, what's up, Ian? It's not necessarily like somebody might say, well, I got to get up and work in the morning. Like I can't just be up all night. So I think that the deeper lesson, like there's always layers, right? So yeah, some people might find it easy, like to get up at night and they literally like are standing and reciting Qur'an, etc. But I think the deeper lesson here is the night represents a period of stillness and the day represents a period of activity. And you transition always between these two states, activity and rest, right? So in your times of rest, take time to do tartil of the Qur'an. Take time while you're in your period of rest to look at the pieces of it and how it relates to the things that you were doing in your time of activity. Okay? That's what I think tartil means, to think about how to connect the Qur'an together with the circumstances of your life, right? And maybe how to connect it within itself, right? But the word itself has to do with putting together things in a harmonious way. Ittisaqu shay. What's the other part of the definition? Putting together in a harmonious way. I forgot the other part now. Oh, wantidamihi, and systematically putting everything together, right? SubhanAllah. I do have a whole course, inshallah. If you want to sign up, let me know. Email me, inshallah. We meet on Saturday, by the way. Oh, Ham beat me to it. So, inshallah. So, okay. So now let's go back to 2532 because I want to show you also how this relates to ahsan, the word ahsan. Yeah, send me an email, inshallah. So, okay, 2532, let's revisit the verse, like what's being said in the verse. He's saying those who do kufr, their criticism is that why was this not brought down all in one bulk? And he said, did we do this to strengthen your heart? وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا, and we bring it in these installments that are systematically connected to the events. And then look in the next verse. وَلَا يَأْتُونَكَ بِمَثَلٍ, and they don't bring you any example, إِلَّا جِئْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَأَحْسَنَ تَفْسِيرًا. He said, and they don't bring you with any they don't bring you any example except we bring you the haqq, the truth about it, wa ahsana tafsira, and a more beautiful tafsir, a more beautiful explanation. Okay, and I'm gonna inshallah I'm gonna end on this verse, so I want to explain this. But I still have more I want to talk about ahsan. Inshallah tomorrow. I want to go into this further because the idea of like the inner coherence of the Qur'an is something like we focus on a lot, but I want to talk more about that as a concept so you can see how beautiful it is, right? So, but let me explain this verse real quick. He says, they don't bring to you any example. Please don't go. I gotta go, bro. I gotta spend time with my wife and chill a little bit. It's been 2 hours. I gotta go. I gotta just have a little bit of time, bro. I appreciate that you feel like that, though. Thank you. That means a lot to me. We are al-ashab. For right now, we're just the companions. Not the sahaba. That's different. Al-ashab. هل تفهم العربية جيدا؟ Inshallah. Okay, so ولا يأتونك بمثل إلا جئناك بالحق وأحسن تفسيرا. And they don't bring you any example except we bring you the truth and the most beautiful tafsir, the most beautiful explanation. Okay? The most beautiful uncovering. Because if I recall correctly, I'm going back to the bookshelf. So I keep getting one, bring them all over here. I'm going to put these ones back. If I recall correctly, I believe the word tafsir means uncovering. But it's been a while since I looked that word up, so I want to look it up real quick. So we're going to put these back. And try to put them in order. Okay, so I think fa is it volume 9? Yes. Okay. Fasara. So tafsir. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad I do too. As you can see, I use it all the time. So so tafsir comes from the root fasara. Sounds like takfir. Oh, close. Yeah. Right. So you have the fa and the ra in there too. Fasara. Right? I believe the root meaning of it is to uncover, but let me see if I remember that correctly, because it's been a while since I read it. Interesting. So here's a couple of different definitions. Yeah, I'm about to read it, inshallah. I was just looking at it. So Maqayis al-Lugha, Ibn Faris says, فَسَرَ كَلِمَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ تدل على بيان شيء وإيضاحه. Okay, that fasara, because tafsir is the root of the word tafsir is fasara, fa sin and ra, or f s and r. That's the root word for it. Okay, so Ibn Faris, he says that fasara, the meaning of it is تدل على بيان شيء وإيضاحه, that it indicates the bayan, the clarification of something, وإيضاحه, and the making it clear, like the bayan of it, the clear explanation of it, and making it clear. And then in another book called At-Tahdhib, the author quotes Ibn al-A'rabi by saying the word al-fasr. Al-fasr means kashfu ma ghuttiya. Kashfu ma ghuttiya. That it's to uncover what has been covered. Fasara is to uncover what has been covered. Let me just see if there's any other interesting points, because sometimes they say kind of similar things. وَقَالَ بَعْضُهُمْ, some of them say, التفسير كشف المراد عن اللفظ المشكل. Some of them say that at-tafsir means to uncover what's intended by a problematic wording. So if you have a problematic wording that's not exactly clear, some people say that at-tafsir is to uncover that. Okay. Let's see if there's any other interesting. Yeah, that's pretty much, a lot of them are saying very similar things. So at-tafsir, the word tafsir has meanings of uncovering something. Okay, uncovering something. And that's where the meaning of like to make things clear comes from. Okay? Now, let's think about the connection of the verses. So the those who do kufr, those who cover, right? Alladhina kafaru, because that's who he introduced this verse by saying, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who do kufr, right? Those who cover, they say, why was not the Qur'an sent down all in one bulk? Likewise, we do that to strengthen your heart, and we did tartil of it, and they don't bring you any example, okay? Because what did they do? They took something that is a neutral fact. Okay, so this is a very important lesson from this verse, because I believe this verse relates to some of the other verses that we read when it says about the Qur'an, ahsan al-hadith, or فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ, they follow the most beautiful of it, right? Because it's presenting, there's a neutral fact that us and alladhina kafaru agree on, that it didn't come down all at once. Just like we're putting our imagination into the verse. Let's imagine us being in the place of speaking with those who do kufr, and they're saying this to us. Why was not the Qur'an sent down all in one bulk? So the fact that the Qur'an was brought with tartil, was brought with these harmonizing installments, right? We can agree that's a neutral fact. We agree that that's the case. Okay? Now it's the interpretation of, is that a good thing or a bad thing? To those who did kufr, they interpret it as being bad. But Allah said, no, it's not bad actually. This is how we strengthen your heart. And then he said, and they don't bring you any example except we bring you the truth and a more beautiful. So see how the truth and a more beautiful. So they go together, but also they're different, if that makes sense. Al-haq and ahsan are related concepts, but also they're not the same concept. Does that make sense? Because he says, we bring you al-haq and ahsan tafsiran. So within the haq is the more beautiful way of thinking about it, the more beautiful uncovering, the more beautiful tafsir. So see, there's a lesson there, that sometimes there could be a fact that is like an agreed upon fact. Like we can look at this and see this. It's not the fact that we disagree about. It's the tafsir of it. It's the explanation of it that we disagree about. So some people could interpret it in a negative way. Some people could interpret it in a positive way. Just like here, the Qur'an coming in these installments, those who did kufr interpreted it in a negative way. But Allah gave the positive side of it and said, we bring you the most beautiful tafsir. So I think that's a really beautiful lesson from the Qur'an, that don't assume, like be able to separate the actual phenomenon that we're looking at from someone's tafsir of it. Because just because someone gave a negative tafsir of it doesn't mean that that's exactly the only meaning for it. It could be have a more positive tafsir. So from all these verses, subhanAllah, the way that the Qur'an teaches us to be in this world is with ihsan. And inshallah, I plan on continuing this tomorrow. So come back. Love you guys. I will close with that. For sure. For sure, Hannah. Thank you. Appreciate you guys, man. I know I say that at the end of every live, but love you guys, man. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. You missed the Izzy. Inshallah, I'll make sure you're here tomorrow. Wa alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah. For sure, for sure. Appreciate you. See you guys, man. Salamun alaikum. It'll probably be, what's tomorrow? Tuesday? Most likely to be like around 5 Eastern. 5 Eastern time. So right now for me it's 7:17 p.m. And I started today about 5. So it'll probably be about 5. That's the plan. Inshallah. Alright. Salamun alaikum. It'll probably be about 5. That's the plan. Inshallah. Alright. Salamun alaikum.